Most bullies don't think before they act. And today, they chose the wrong girl. They tugged at Mia's skirt as a joke. But when the fabric tore and the cafeteria erupted in laughter, her face said everything: shame, fear, and silence. Then the room shifted. Every smirk faded. Because standing behind her was Jason Statham, watching it all. And the moment he stepped forward, the bullies understood one thing too late. This wasn't a prank anymore. They had crossed the wrong line. Before we continue, I just want to say thank you. Your support, the likes, the comments, the way you show up for every story, it truly means the world. If you're enjoying this one so far, make sure to stick around because what happens next? Let's just say karma arrives fast. Lunch hour at Westbridge High always carried the same rhythm: trays clattering, sneakers squeaking against the waxed floor, gossip slicing through the air like invisible blades. Teachers called it break time, but for the quiet kids, it was anything but. Mia Carter sat alone at the edge of the cafeteria as she always did, back straight, hands folded in her lap, eyes down. She never complained, never asked for the spotlight. She ate the same lunch every day: an apple, a sandwich she made herself, and a thermos of tea her aunt insisted would warm her from the inside out. She wasn't shy because she wanted to be. She was shy because the world had taken more from her than anyone at that lunchroom table could imagine. One parent gone, another buried under grief, and the last person who truly protected her, the man she called Uncle Jay, had moved states away after the funeral of her father. Still, he checked in. He always checked in. He never came unannounced, never stormed into her life. That wasn't Jason Statham's way. Instead, he showed up in the background, dropping off groceries anonymously, paying for school supplies without saying a word, leaving a quiet message on her aunt's phone from time to time. Tell Mia I'm proud of her. Doesn't matter what she's going through, she keeps going. That's courage. He kept his promises, even when no one was looking. But Mia didn't know he was in town today. Jason had driven to Westbridge that morning to meet with the school counselor about a scholarship fund he wanted to set up under her father's name, Sergeant Daniel Carter. His best friend, his brother in everything but blood, the kind of man you trusted with your life. But right now, as he wrapped up paperwork and walked toward the exit, something pulled him to the cafeteria hallway. A sound, a shift, a feeling he knew too well. Not shouting, not violence. Something quieter. The electricity of cruelty just before it sparks into flame. Inside, Mia had no idea danger was forming behind her. The cafeteria had a certain group, 4 boys who treated the school like their own personal stage. They weren't evil, just bored, restless, raised by parents who excused everything. Their laughter traveled before they did, the kind of laughter people avoided. Mia didn't look up when she heard them stand. She knew the sound of those footsteps. They were the same ones that followed her down the hall, the same ones that accidentally shoved her locker door shut before she could move her fingers. She hoped today would be different. It was. "Oi, Mia," one of them said, dragging out her name like it amused him. "Cute skirt." She froze. Her aunt had bought it for her last week, soft blue, simple, something she'd saved up for. A small thing, but to Mia it felt like confidence stitched into fabric. "Thanks," she whispered, trying to keep her voice steady. "Oh, calm down, new girl," another mocked. "It's just a joke." The boys exchanged grins, the kind that hid the real intention behind their teeth. One stepped behind her, another moved in front. They always surrounded her like a pack, but today they went further. "Let's see what it's made of." Before she could react, a hand closed around the hem of her skirt and yanked. Mia gasped, the sound small, terrified, as her chair nearly tipped. The fabric tore with a ripping crack that echoed across the cafeteria. For a moment, time held its breath. Then the laughter came. A wave of it, sharp, cruel, humiliating. Hands covered mouths, phones lifted. Some whispered, "Oh my God," others just stared. But no one moved to help, not one student stood up. Mia pressed her hands to what was left of her skirt, cheeks burning, eyes stinging. She kept her knees together as tightly as she could, swallowing the sob climbing up her throat. They hadn't just torn a piece of clothing. They'd torn the last safe corner of her world. And that's when the cafeteria doors pushed open with a quiet, deliberate force. Jason Statham stepped inside. He wasn't supposed to be there. Not for her, not for this. He just finished a meeting heading to his car, but something tugged at him. A memory, Daniel laughing beside him saying, "If anything ever happens to me, look after Mia. She's gentle, Jay, too gentle for a hard world." A promise like that doesn't fade. It doesn't age, it burns. So Jason listened to his instinct and walked toward the cafeteria, and the moment he entered, every soldier's sense inside him sharpened. The air wasn't normal. It was thick, wrong, like the calm after an explosion. Then he saw her, curled in on herself, holding torn fabric, eyes full of shame. Daniel's daughter. He felt something old and dangerous wake inside him, something he had spent years locking away. Jason moved forward, not quickly, not loudly, just enough that the light caught the boys' faces from behind Mia. One saw him first, his laughter died instantly. Another swallowed. The tallest one stepped back so fast he hit a table. Jason didn't look angry. He didn't shout. He didn't crack his knuckles or make a scene. He just walked. That alone was enough to silence half the cafeteria. Mia heard footsteps approaching and braced herself, too embarrassed to look up. Her fingers trembled as she fought the tears threatening to fall. Then she heard a voice she hadn't heard in months, steady, warm, quietly protective. "Mia." Her breath hitched. She lifted her head. Jason was kneeling in front of her, eyes soft but fierce with something the bullies didn't understand yet. He shrugged off his jacket and gently wrapped it around her waist, making sure she was covered before saying anything else. "You're all right," he murmured. "You're safe." Her eyes filled instantly. "Uncle Jay, what are you?" "Visiting," he offered a small, fragile smile, "and lucky I did." Behind him, one of the boys made the mistake of speaking. "It was just a joke, man." Jason turned his head slightly. It wasn't a violent movement. It wasn't dramatic. It was enough. The boy stumbled back, breath caught in his throat as Jason's eyes, calm but cold, settled on him. "Stand up," Jason said softly to Mia, not taking his gaze off the boys. "Let's fix your skirt." He helped her up slowly, guiding her behind him so she stood shielded from view. Then he faced the bullies. 3 words, nothing more. "What did you do?" Silence dropped like a hammer. The boys' hands shook, none of them answered. Jason stepped forward once, just once, and the sound of his boot hitting the floor felt like thunder. The entire cafeteria held its breath. No threats. No yelling. Just presence. And presence alone was enough. Still, Jason didn't touch them, didn't even raise his voice. He simply said, "You're going to put your phones down, all of you." Hands lowered instantly. "You're going to walk to the principal's office." More silence. "And you're going to pray," he finished softly, "that I'm calm enough to speak on your behalf when I get there." Every student watched the boys shrink, their faces pale, their bravado crumbling into dust. Jason didn't spare them another glance. Instead, he placed a hand on Mia's shoulder. "Come on," he murmured, "let's get you something to wear." As they walked toward the exit, whispers spread behind them. "Who is he? Did you see his face? Why did she call him uncle? Those boys are done for." But Mia didn't hear any of it. She walked beside Jason, wrapped in his jacket, holding onto the only steady thing she had left in her life. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. Outside the cafeteria, Jason paused, looking down at her with a mixture of heartbreak and anger. "I'm sorry I wasn't here sooner," he said quietly. Tears finally spilled down her cheeks. I didn't think you'd come." Jason exhaled slowly, jaw clenched with guilt he'd been carrying for years. "Mia, I promised your dad I'd look out for you." His voice thickened, cracking for the first time. "And today I almost broke that promise." She shook her head, gripping his sleeve. "No, you kept it." They stood for a moment in the empty hallway, one girl bruised by life, and one man still haunted by the brother he couldn't save. And as the door swung shut behind them, the bullies finally realized the truth. They hadn't just torn a skirt. They had awakened something far worse. A soldier's promise. The hallway outside the cafeteria was empty, But the quiet felt different now, not peaceful, not safe, but holding a tension that clung to the walls like dust. Jason walked beside Mia, steady and slow, his jacket cinched around her waist, her footsteps small and shaky. She kept wiping her cheeks even though she wasn't crying anymore, just trying to make the redness disappear, trying to erase what had just happened. Jason noticed, but he didn't comment. He understood better than most that people often cry hardest when they try not to cry at all. They turned the corner toward the front office and stopped. A crowd of teachers stood there, not talking, not moving, just frozen in a half circle. And in the middle was Principal Donahue, holding a tablet with trembling hands. On the screen was the security feed from the cafeteria. The bullies. The skirt. Mia. Jason kneeling beside her. Silence spread like a wave. Jason exhaled slowly, bracing himself for a confrontation that he knew was coming. Rules, policies, school procedures. He had dealt with institutions long enough to expect red tape. But then the principal stepped forward, emotion tightening his face. "Mr. Statham," he asked, voice tight. Jason nodded once. Principal Donahue swallowed. I need to tell you something important." Jason placed a gentle hand on Mia's shoulder. "Go sit in my car," he murmured. "Doors unlocked." Mia hesitated. She didn't want to leave his side, but his tone was gentle reassurance, not dismissal. So she nodded and slipped down the hall. A teacher hurried to escort her safely. The moment she was out of earshot, Donahue motioned Jason toward his office. Inside, the blinds were half closed, the lights dim. A screen replayed the cafeteria incident on loop, but Donahue didn't look at it. He looked at Jason. "Those boys have been warned before," the principal said quietly. "Suspensions, meetings with parents, nothing worked." He pinched the bridge of his nose. "This time, cameras caught enough to expel them." Jason nodded once, not with satisfaction but with something heavier. Justice was never sweet to him. It was just necessary. But Donahue wasn't finished. "I owe you an apology," he said, voice breaking slightly. "Mia has reported harassment before." He faltered. Jason leaned forward just a fraction. "You didn't act," he said softly. It wasn't an accusation. It wasn't anger. It was the truth, delivered with the weight of a man who had seen too many institutions fail the vulnerable. Donahue lowered his eyes. "I should have safeguarded her sooner." Jason didn't respond. Silence was often louder than judgment. After a long moment, the principal spoke again. "Mr. Statham, I read the notes from her file. I know about Sergeant Carter. I know he was your teammate." Jason's jaw tightened. "There's something else," Donahue added carefully. "Mia, she doesn't have many people left, does she?" "She has me," Jason said quietly. The principal nodded respectfully. "Then I want to make today right, not just for her but for her father's name." He handed Jason 3 forms: bullying reports, disciplinary action papers, and a school statement acknowledging fault. Jason studied each one slowly. "Thank you." Donahue exhaled in relief. But Jason wasn't done. "There's one more thing," Jason said. "I'm setting up a scholarship in Sergeant Carter's name for students like Mia." He paused. "Kids who fight battles no one sees." Donahue's eyes softened. "We'll honor him properly, Mr. Statham." Jason nodded once and stood. Meeting done. But something was still wrong. A soldier can feel danger in the bones, the same way a storm warns the sea before lightning strikes. And right now, Jason felt a shift. He stepped into the hallway. The air was sharp. Too sharp. And then he saw it. 2 of the expelled boys stood outside by the parking lot doors, eyes red with anger, fists balled, whispering in heated bitterness. Their parents hadn't arrived yet. Their consequences hadn't sunk in. And Mia was alone in the parking lot, sitting in Jason's car, hugging his jacket tighter. Jason walked calmly, not fast, not slow, toward the doors. Inside the foyer, a crowd of students watched quietly, sensing something was about to happen. One of the boys, Tyler, slammed his fist against the wall. "This is all her fault," he muttered. "She's gonna pay for this." Jason's hand closed around the door handle. He stepped outside. The boys spun around. Their shoulders stiffened. Their mouths snapped shut. Jason didn't speak immediately. He let silence settle between them like dust on an abandoned battlefield. Then quietly, "You were going to walk home." Tyler swallowed. We were." Jason looked him in the eyes, not angrily, not coldly, but with a steady force that made the boy's chest tighten. "You will," Jason said, "but not before you answer one question." He stepped forward only one step, and both boys staggered back as if pushed by wind. "Why her?" Jason asked softly. "What did she ever do to you?" The boys exchanged glances, then looked down. Jason continued, voice low and controlled. "You think strength comes from hurting people who won't fight back." A pause. "But strength, real strength, is what you do when someone is already on the ground." Tyler's mouth trembled. We didn't mean to." "Yes, you did," Jason said gently. "People do accidentally become cruel. They choose it every day." The boys fell silent. "And now," Jason added, "you get to choose something else." Their eyes lifted. "You can choose to be better than this," he said. "Or you can choose to become the kind of men your future children will fear." The words hit harder than any punch could. Tyler's breathing shook. Are you gonna tell our parents?" Jason didn't answer at first. He looked past them to Mia curled in the passenger seat, hugging herself, trying not to look at anyone. Then he looked back. "That," Jason said, "depends on what you do next." The boy's shoulders fell. "Apologize," Jason said, "not to me, to her." They froze. Jason didn't repeat himself. The boys walked across the lot, legs stiff with fear, shame dripping off them like rainwater. When they reached Jason's car, Mia flinched at the sight of them, hand tightening around the fabric of Jason's jacket. Tyler swallowed, voice barely above a whisper. "Mia, we're sorry," he stammered. "We shouldn't have done that, any of it." Mia looked at them, tears forming again, but this time they weren't tears of fear. They were release. She nodded once, small and fragile. Jason watched them walk away, shoulders hunched, steps slower, something inside them finally cracking open. He waited until they disappeared down the block. Then he opened the passenger door and knelt beside Mia, just like he did in the cafeteria. "You did nothing wrong," he told her gently. Mia wiped her eyes. Why were you really here?" Jason hesitated, the truth pressing against his ribs. "I came to talk to your school," he said softly, "about a scholarship in your dad's name." Mia's breath caught. "For me?" "For anyone who reminds me of him," Jason answered. "And you remind me of him every day." Her voice trembled. "How?" Jason's eyes softened. "Your courage, you keep going, even when it hurts, even when people don't see the battles you're fighting." Mia looked away, swallowing a knot in her throat. "Dad always said I wasn't strong." Jason shook his head, emotion flickering in his eyes. "No," he said. "Your father said you didn't feel strong. That's different." He touched her shoulder. "But strength isn't loud, Mia. It's not fists or shouting. It's surviving days like this." Tears overflowed again. Then quietly, "Will you stay?" she whispered. "Not forever, just today." Jason exhaled a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "Yeah," he said, "I'll stay." They sat in the car for a long moment, just breathing, just existing in the stillness. The world moved around them, but inside that car, time softened. Finally, Jason started the engine. "Where do you want to go?" he asked. Mia thought for a moment. "Anywhere," she said, "as long as it's not here." Jason nodded. He drove her out of the parking lot, leaving behind the school, the crowd, the whispering students, and the shattered pieces of the afternoon. They drove to the hill overlooking the lake, the place Daniel once said he'd take Mia to see the sunset when she got older. Jason parked. Mia stepped out into the quiet breeze, the world stretching wide around her. She took a deep breath, the first full breath she'd taken all day. Jason stood beside her, hands in his pockets looking at the horizon. He didn't talk, he didn't force comfort. He just stayed like a guardian her father left behind. After a long silence, Mia whispered, "Uncle Jay." "Yeah. Thank you." Jason shook his head softly. "No," he murmured, "I'm just keeping a promise." Mia looked up at him. "And I'm keeping one too," she said quietly. Dad always said if I ever felt scared, I should find you. Jason's jaw tightened, not in anger but in heartbreak. You found me, he whispered. The sun dipped behind the clouds, casting a warm, golden glow over the lake, a silent tribute to everything they had lost and everything they still had left. And as Mia leaned her head lightly against Jason's arm, trusting, safe, no longer alone, he made a quiet vow only the wind heard. As long as I'm breathing, no one will hurt you again. No yelling. No revenge fantasy. Just a soldier's promise, unbroken, unwavering, and eternal. And with that, the day that began in cruelty ended in something far more powerful. Family, healing, and the soft kind of strength that bullies will never understand.